The back row witness. The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy was vast, its ceilings rising higher than any human cathedral Mara Ellis had ever seen. Thousands of seats curved downward toward the central stage where a single figure stood. Holographic charts flickered around him. Battle maps, casualty projections, tactical overlays. None of it lessened the oppressive weight that seemed to radiate from his presence. The Drakshar instructor was massive, even by alien standards. His scales were blackened with age, his talons dulled only by constant use, and his left tusk bore a scar that suggested it had once been snapped clean in combat. When he spoke, his voice was not loud, yet it pressed down on every cadet in the room like the weight of stone. "You are soldiers in training," he rumbled, his throat clicking with a predator's cadence. "You dream of war as if it were banners and glory. You will learn it as screams and rot. And most of you," his burning eyes swept the chamber, "most of you will die before you truly understand what you face." The air thickened with silence. Students of dozens of species sat frozen, some with quills or tendrils twitching nervously, others staring at the floor. Mara Ellis sat alone, in the very last row, her elbows resting lazily on the back of the seat in front of her. To an untrained eye, she looked half-bored, but her gaze tracked the predator's every movement. The Drakshar paced across the stage, recounting campaigns that ended in genocide, victories painted in rivers of blood. His words were not lessons so much as reminders of inevitability, that the galaxy belonged to predators, and those who weren't strong enough existed only to feed them. And yet, when his gaze swept the hall again, it stalled. His slitted pupils locked on the back row, on the one cadet who did not avert her eyes. Mara didn't flinch. She had grown up staring down worse things than a lecturer in a controlled environment. On Earth, the forests and oceans were full of creatures that stalked you at night, and storms that tore the roofs off your home. You either faced them or you were forgotten. Meeting the predator's stare was second nature. A flicker passed across his reptilian features, something subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable to those who watched him closely. The steady rhythm of his speech faltered for the briefest of moments. The predator inhaled sharply, as though the scent of danger had reached him. The other cadets noticed. Whispers broke out in the rows below Mara. Did he just stop? Why is he staring at the human? Doesn't he eat their kind for sport? The Drakshar continued, but the edge of certainty was gone from his tone. He pressed harder into the lecture, detailing strategies of ambush, ways to break prey herds, how to cull the weak so the strong could be isolated. But it rang differently now, as though he were reminding himself of his own superiority. When the hour concluded, the predator's voice tapered off. The holograms around him dissolved into air. No one moved, waiting for his dismissal. That was the way of things. When a Drakshar finished speaking, no lesser being dared speak before he left. But instead of striding out, he turned toward the Academy officials seated at the edge of the stage. His great head bowed slightly. His words carried across the silent chamber. Permission to leave early. The statement hung in the air like a thunderclap. Predators never asked. Predators took. Yet here he was, a warlord who had culled entire civilizations, waiting for a nod from bureaucrats. The staff hastily granted it, stammering their approval. The Drakshar gathered his cloak around his shoulders and stepped off the stage. But as he passed the tiers of students, his gaze shifted once more toward the back row. For just a moment, the predator's eyes met Mara's again. And this time, it was not she who seemed examined, but he who seemed measured. The doors closed behind him with a hiss. The hall remained hushed long after he left, as if no one trusted their voices to break the spell. Mara exhaled slowly, leaning back in her seat. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken a word during the entire lecture. But the way the predator had looked at her would be remembered. And in a place where reputations decided survival as much as skill, she suspected whispers would carry far beyond this hall. She smirked faintly. Not bad for sitting in the back row. Predators and prey. By the next rotation, the lecture hall was abuzz. Whispers darted between cadets of every species, clicking mandibles, fluttering gills, vibrating antennae. No one spoke openly, not with instructors stalking the corridors, but the question lingered in every hushed exchange. Why had the Drakshar asked permission? Mara Ellis walked into the chamber late enough that most of the seats were filled. She chose the back row again. Heads turned, furtive glances darting her way, but no one spoke to her. She could feel the change already. Space opened around her, as if invisible walls now kept the other cadets at a safe distance. On Earth, that had been the way of wolves with fire. They didn't know what it was, only that it burned. The lecture began with a less imposing instructor, a gray-skinned Salari whose insectoid limbs clicked as he brought up holograms of supply chains. Logistics, transport, efficiency. Normally the driest of subjects. Yet today, half the cadets weren't listening. Their eyes flicked toward Mara, then toward the door, half expecting the Drakshar to stalk back in. Mara let them look. She'd been stared at plenty of times before, by hostile tribes in ruined cities, by predators in the night forests, by fellow soldiers wondering if she'd survive another week. Stares couldn't kill you. After the lecture ended, she took her time gathering her notes, hoping to slip out once the hall cleared. But instead, a shadow fell across the aisle. The air grew heavier, colder. He was back. The Drakshar loomed over her row, silent. The other cadets scattered, fleeing through the exits like prey, sensing a kill. Only Mara remained, seated casually, one leg crossed over the other. She looked up at him. Cadet Ellis, the predator rasped. His voice carried less thunder here, but more focus, as if honed to a blade's edge. Walk with me. She didn't move right away. That an order? Instructor? A pause. His nostrils flared. Then a request. That word again. Request. From a species that did not ask. Mara rose, slinging her satchel over her shoulder, and followed him into the side corridor. The walls here were narrower, the lighting dimmer. His talons scraped faintly against the tiles as he walked. When he stopped, she stopped too. I must know, he said finally, turning toward her. His eyes burned in the low light. Why did you not look away? Mara tilted her head. You mean yesterday? When you stare me down? He did not answer, only waited. She gave him the truth. Because where I come from, looking away gets you killed. Earth is unfriendly. The animals don't stop because you look small. The storms don't care if you're tired. The hunger doesn't wait until you're ready. If you flinch, if you bow, if you hide, something bigger takes you. So we learn not to. The Drakshar's throat clicked. Earth. A Class 12 death world, yes. She nodded. By your charts, maybe. To us, it's just home. He studied her in silence for a long time. His massive frame dwarfed hers, a fragile human body barely coming up to his chest. Yet his gaze carried something Mara had not expected. Calculation. When I saw your eyes upon me, he admitted, I felt the same tension I feel when facing another predator. My instincts whispered danger. It was unwelcome. Mara almost laughed. Unwelcome? Try growing up with it every day. It stops feeling unusual after a while. The predator leaned closer, his breath hot, carrying the scent of iron. You are small, weak, soft, and yet my blood does not allow me to dismiss you. Mara lifted her chin. Good. Then don't. They stood in silence, locked in that strange balance. For the first time since entering the academy, Mara realized she wasn't being evaluated as a curiosity. She was being measured as a potential rival. At last, the Drakshar stepped back. You have answered my question. That is enough. He inclined his head, not much, but unmistakable. Then he turned, vanishing down the corridor with a sweep of his cloak. Mara exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. The exchange had drawn no witnesses, but she knew the predator would not keep this to himself. Predators did not waste their breath. By the time she returned to her quarters, the whispers had already spread. She heard fragments as cadets passed her in the halls. Looked at her, asked her to walk with him. Not pray, not pray. Mara closed her door behind her and leaned against it. She hadn't planned for any of this. She had just sat in the back row, done what humans always did, face forward, endure, survive. But now, In a galaxy that thought of Earthlings as weak curiosities, she was being seen differently, and she wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a new kind of danger. The lesson turns. The lecture hall was tense before the day's speaker even arrived. Word had spread through the academy faster than plasma fire. The Drakshar had spoken privately to the human, and then left her alive. That was unprecedented enough, but the rumors carried more weight. He had treated her as an equal. Mara Ellis sat where she always did, in the back row. The space around her remained conspicuously empty, a wide buffer no one dared cross. The cadets no longer looked at her with curiosity. Now, their gazes were edged with wariness, as if they weren't sure whether sitting too close would draw predators' attention. The new lecturer strode into the chamber. He was not Drakshar, but a Thalvar, another predator species, lean and feline, with serrated fangs that glinted as he spoke. His tone dripped with arrogance, the kind of confidence that came from ruling the food chain. Yesterday, the Thalvar began. You were instructed in fear. His golden eyes scanned the crowd. Today, you will be instructed in reality. Some of you believe all species are equal in war. That is a delusion. Only predators shape history. Prey exist only as footnotes in our victories. A ripple of uneasy, shifting passed through the cadets. Mara remained still. The Thalvar prowled the stage, tail lashing behind him. I hear talk of humans, he sneered, that they are strong, dangerous, worthy of respect. He bared his fangs in what passed for a smile. Ridiculous. I have studied their planet. Fragile bones, slow reflexes, pitiful claws, a soft-skinned mistake of nature. If I set one paw upon their world, I could shred their armies in days. The hall was silent. No one dared speak, but Mara's jaw tightened. She had heard arrogance before. On Earth, entire regimes had underestimated what ordinary men and women could endure. Those regimes no longer existed. She rose from her seat. The motion alone drew gasps. Cadets turned, eyes wide, as the small human in the back row stood against the predator on stage. Mara's voice carried, calm and even. That's the thing about Earth. It's always someone's first mistake, thinking we're easy prey. The Thalvar's ears flattened. You challenge me, human. I remind you, Mara said, stepping forward a pace at a time, her voice steady. We survive storms that flatten cities. We hunt predators that should kill us. We fought each other for centuries until we learned to build weapons that could bring down skies. Fragile? Maybe, but fragile doesn't mean harmless. Gasps rippled across the audience. No one ever contradicted a predator instructor. No one dared. The Thalvar snarled, leaping down from the stage with the grace of a hunting beast. He loomed over Mara, towering by more than a meter, muscles rippling beneath his striped pelt. His voice was a growl. Say one more word, and I will show this hall what becomes of prey that forgets its place. Before Mara could reply, a new sound split the chamber, deep, rumbling, unmistakable. The Drakshar. He entered without warning, his heavy footfalls echoing. The Thalvar stiffened, ears flicking back, his bravado faltering. The Drakshar did not look at him first. Instead, his gaze locked on Mara. Then, slowly, deliberately, he moved to stand beside her. She is no prey, the Drakshar declared, his voice reverberating through the hall. I have faced prey. I have devoured prey. When I looked upon this human, I felt the truth. She meets the gaze of predators without fear. That unsettles me more than teeth or claws. The hall fell into stunned silence. The Thalvar hissed, bristling with indignation. You defend a soft skin? I defend recognition, the Drakshar said coldly. And I warn you, underestimating her kind may cost you more than your pride. Mara said nothing. She didn't need to. Standing there, back straight, chin raised, she let the weight of their words hang in the air. Around the hall, cadets exchanged glances. If even predators feared the human's eyes, what did that say about humanity? Mara's voice broke the silence, quiet but cutting. We don't ask to be feared. But if you mistake us for prey, you won't get a second chance to learn otherwise. The Thalvar bared his fangs, but said nothing more. The Drakshar's presence made his posturing hollow. He turned sharply and retreated to the stage, his tail lashing in frustration. Mara returned to her seat in the back row, unhurried. The whispers followed her, sharp and urgent. The shift had happened. She was no longer invisible, no longer curiosity. She had become something else entirely. And though Mara didn't show it, she felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders. When predators leave early. The announcement came 2 days later, a combat simulation mandatory for all cadets. Mara Ellis read the briefing from her datapad in the mess hall. It was a team exercise. Mixed squads of alien cadets dropped into a simulated urban battlefield, tasked with capturing a control node. It was meant to test tactics, leadership, and adaptability. But everyone knew what it really meant this time. A chance to see the human in action. The whispers had grown too loud to ignore. If she was just prey, the simulation would expose it. If she was more, the entire academy would witness it firsthand. When the exercise began, Mara found herself assigned to a squad of 6. None of them looked pleased. The 2 insectoid Frixie exchanged nervous clicks, while the hulking reptilian simply stared at her with distrust. No one wanted to follow her lead. That was fine. Mara didn't need their trust, only their presence. The battlefield materialized around them. Towering ruins, smoke-filled alleys, the distant roar of simulated artillery. It reminded Mara uncomfortably of Earth's war zones. She adjusted her training rifle, took in the angles of cover, the broken lines of sight. Instinct guided her. We'll flank north, the VAR rumbled, moving before anyone could object. Sure, Mara said mildly, falling into step. She didn't fight him for command. She let them walk straight into the ambush she knew was waiting. When the first volley of plasma fire ripped across the street, panic erupted. The Frixie scattered, the VAR bellowed, and the squad fell into disarray. Mara alone dropped low, sliding into cover behind a collapsed wall. She marked the ambush points, counted the attacker's rhythm, and moved. One by one, she dismantled the trap. She didn't match the predators in strength or speed, but she used the environment, collapsing rubble, ricocheting shots, forcing them into crossfire. By the time her squad realized what had happened, the ambushers were down, and Mara was already pressing forward. Word spread fast through the simulation feeds. Instructors and cadets watching from the observation gallery leaned forward. She's not following their orders, one whispered. She's outmaneuvering them. She's turning the battlefield against them. Mara's squad, shaken but alive, began falling in behind her. By the second engagement, even the VAR had stopped barking commands. By the third, the Frixie were clicking nervously, awaiting her signals. She had become their leader without ever asking. The final push for the control node was brutal. Simulated enemies poured from fortified positions, overwhelming in number. Mara didn't tell her squad to charge. Instead, she split them, lured the defenders into pursuit, then collapsed both flanks onto the exposed rear. It was messy, desperate, and improvised, but worked. When the node fell, Mara stood at its center, training rifle raised, her squad around her. She was bruised, bloodied from grazes, breathing hard, but standing. The simulation dissolved. The ruins flickered into the sterile white of the academy arena. The defeated squads emerged, some scowling, some shaken. Mara's squad stood silent, still absorbing what had just happened. In the observation gallery, silence held for a long moment. Then, from the shadows at the back, a familiar figure rose. The Drakshar. He had been watching. Of course he had. His eyes swept the arena, then fixed on Mara. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then he turned toward the instructors. Permission to leave early. The words rolled across the chamber, heavy as stone. The instructors scrambled to grant it, bowing their heads. The Drakshar stepped out, his cloak trailing behind him. He didn't look back, but everyone understood. His request wasn't submission, it was acknowledgement. Mara exhaled, lowering her rifle. The cadet's eyes followed her, wide with something new. Not curiosity, not even fear. Recognition. She returned to the back row later that day, slipping into her usual seat as if nothing had changed. but she felt the weight of their stares. The galaxy had seen her now, and it would not forget. Humans had come to the Academy as curiosities. After today, they would be remembered as something else. Predators who happened to walk on two soft-skinned legs.